Hello, my name is Latoya Foston, and I am the Executive Director of She Built This City. We are a nonprofit organization focused on igniting interest in construction and the maker trades for girls, career choosing women, and non binary individuals. We are doing a series on equity in the trades and what does it mean to achieve 50-50 equity by the year 2030. We have launched a pledge to be able to achieve that goal. And in that pledge, we discuss diversity, equity, and inclusion, hospitable working environment, and investing in the future. And we've been bringing to the table leaders in the space who've been doing the hard work of making the trades a safe and equitable space for women and non-binary individuals. And today we are honored to have Vicki O'Leary with the Iron Workers here with us today to share about some amazing strides they have been making as an organization for women in this space. Specifically, today is around hospitable working environment, place, space, and policy that are pro-women and provides opportunities and access for women to live their full lives and be successful. And our focus today is on maternity leave. And I am just eager to dig in and hear this story and how Vicki and her team really led the way for the women and what impact that they've had. And so first, Vicki, thank you. I know you're incredibly busy. Thank you for joining us today.
Well, I'm Vicki O'Leary, the Director of Diversity for the Ironworkers International, and I've been an ironworker for 36 years, so I guess I'm pretty seasoned. I'm out of Local 1 in Chicago, and I came to work for the International back in 2016. Back in 2006, I decided that I wanted to get my bachelor's degree because I wanted to show my son that it could be done. And so I went back to school. I ended up getting 3 bachelor's degrees.
Wow.
And then I waited 2 years and then I went and got my master's degree. But in the meantime, I had kept sending my resume or my CV to headquarters, only when stuff had changed, but about every 6 months. And I wasn't a pain. I just kind of sent it in going, hey, I updated this, take a look. If you ever need anything, let me know. And didn't hear anything for a long time till January 2016. So that shows you that it was 8 years of just being diligent and continuing my education. And I kind of knew that that was going to be the case because I'm trying to break into really a man's space, or at least what they perceive to be a man's space.
Right.
And when General President Dean called me in January of 2016, he said, hey, can you meet me on Friday at this restaurant? I'd like to talk to you about something. And I don't know about anybody else, but getting that phone call was just kind of like, of course I was going to meet him, but I'm like, is this for a job? Am I in trouble? Dude, I mean, I've already been in the field for, an iron worker for 30 some odd years. And it was just like, God, this is so crazy. So on my way to go meet him, and I just remember it was raining. It was a really crappy January in Chicago. There's an outlet mall right across the street from where I was going to meet him. And I'm thinking, I don't have a suit jacket. I probably should have a suit jacket. So I remember going, this is so crazy. I walked into St. John outlet, which we all know St. John is pretty pricey, which I knew it was, but I didn't know it was that pricey, but it was an outlet store. So I thought, well, I should be okay. So I told the lady, I think I'm going for an interview, but I'm not for sure I'm going for, they were so wonderful. So I bought a suit jacket. I didn't buy anything else. I bought a suit jacket and put the suit jacket on. I felt like $1 million. So I go and meet Mr. Dean. Mr. Dean was not there yet. So I sat at the bar drinking a Diet Coke. He walks in with his wife and his daughter, which automatically put me at ease. His wife and daughter sat at another table. He walked up to me and we just started talking, and he hands me this proposal and says, I would really like you to come to work for the International. I'm not exactly sure what the job looks like, but we need diversity and we need somebody, and you've got a safety background. So this is kind of like the balance of both. And he told me, I want to sign the paper right then. And he goes, no, take the weekend. And I'm thinking, no, I want to sign it before you change your mind. But I took the weekend, and of course, I knew I was going to take it, but it's been the most exciting and sometimes the most excruciating job. Part of my job is to take care of our members that are women and people of color. And when they have issues, I'm kind of the complaint department, but also Mrs. Fix-It. So, and some of the things that I hear are just really hard. And
Yeah.
sometimes, like when somebody calls and tells me they're pregnant, at this point, it's a celebration. And I love those calls. So I should probably tell you the story of how this came about.
Yes.
So I was about 5 months into this new job, and we were at the Tradeswomen Build Nations conference, and we had a caucus with our general president. And he had been general president not quite a year when this caucus took place. And so it was about 150 ironworker women, and he was taking Q&A, and we kind of vetted some questions ahead of time. But then, of course, when there was follow-up questions, women could ask whatever they wanted. And one of the women asked, why don't we have maternity care? And they went on to tell Mr. Dean that they were going so far as to hiding their pregnancies, wearing big overalls for as long as they could. And in the winter, it was a little easier to cover your baby up. And then also some were saying they weren't being honest with their doctors about how physically demanding their jobs were,
Yeah.
which were all things that were valid. And then Bridget Booker stands up. She's a woman out of Peoria, Illinois, out of Local 112. And she said, she told her story of working in the rod patch one day too long. And she had a miscarriage that night. And that was what was the deciding factor. As we are walking out of there after hearing this, Mr. Dean looks at me and he says, we have to fix this. He's like, I feel like such a dope. I never thought about what you guys do when you're pregnant. I don't know. I just never put it together. So he told me, we've got to figure this out. And he tasked me with figuring it out. So the one thing that we did have in the ironworkers was an off-the-job accident policy. And this off-the-job accident policy was for short-term disability. Say you broke your leg or your ankle playing soccer with your kids over the weekend. Well, we didn't want you hopping into work and acting like it happened on the job so that you would get workman's comp, right? We wanted to protect our contractors as well as our members. So they came out with this off-the-job accident policy, which again is short-term. It's like six weeks or so of about $800 cap a week. And so he gave me direction with that. He said, maybe this is something you can dovetail on. So after reading many times the off-the-job accident policy, it really became clear that this is exactly what we could do. We could actually mimic this, except we need to make it a longer time. And what we tried to figure out is how do we make it to where it's fair and equitable, but not overkill, right? You want to make sure it was just the right amount. So we came up with, this is a little bit different than off-the-job accident. We have to have 100 hours in the previous 3 months prior to going on it. So it's not a lot of hours, but it just means that you're still active with the ironworkers. You still have to have insurance through your union hall when you start on the policy. Because here's the deal. When our insurance is tied to the hours that we work. So if you haven't worked, you don't have insurance after a specific period of time. So it could be 3 months, however many months you've got banked, how many hours you have banked. So that was part of what was said at the TWBN conference, that, potentially we could run out of insurance when we really need it. When you go in to give birth, you don't want to have that big bill because you don't have insurance. So we came up with the same $800 a week, which is amazing. It's a cap of $800 a week. So it's 66% of your pay with a cap of $800 a week. It can start your 13th week. So you get it for 6 months prior to giving birth, and then the 6 to 8 weeks after, depending on whether or not it was a C-section. We thought that was really important. And we really made it simple. So to apply, I believe I sent you a copy of the policy. We made a brochure, and we have an administrator that does that for us. So local unions, the only thing that a local union has to do is at the very beginning is sign off on it, that she's got the hours or whatever. And then after she does it, the local union does it, and then it's the doctor that does it. And then it's sent to our admin. And our admin does this quick little investigation, make sure they actually have insurance through their hall, they have the 100 hours, and it's done. So the first check takes a couple weeks. And then after that, those checks are weekly. So it's just like getting a paycheck every single week. The one thing I make sure to tell the women though, save a little bit of that money because we're going to 1099 you. You know, we want to make sure that you're not going to end up going into the next tax year not having saved any of this money and getting a big tax bill, which I haven't heard that's been a problem. And I also try to walk the women through the policy because it is pretty simple, but we want to make sure that they realize it's going to take a couple weeks for that first check. After that, it's going to be like clockwork. And I think that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I did after we put out the policy, and especially when the pandemic started and actually had some time at home, was to figure out, is our money going to good use? So I looked at the retention of the women that have used the policy. In order to satisfy the requirements of that, I looked to see if they had any hours in our database. If I didn't see any hours, I would call her local union and I would ask her business manager, you know, and I can also look and see if they're paying their dues still. So if they had hours, they were paying their dues, or if a woman said, I really want to stay home until my child's 2, that's a win. She's coming back. She's paying her dues. She's still in the game. She's just taking a little pause. And we would never say that a man couldn't do that. So I consider that a win, that she can come back whenever she's ready. Her dues are paid. And I have to tell you, Latoya, we had an 83% retention rate with the women that use the policy. So I didn't feel like it was just a one and done thing. And we actually have women now that are on their second babies with us. One other stipulation we did put in there was you had to wait 24 months between using the policy and being able to use it again. We don't have a cap on how many times you can use it. It's just you have to have a 24-month break in between. And to see women now that are going into their second pregnancy is pretty cool, because now they haven't had to choose between working, you know, in their career and having a family or growing their family.
Yeah.
Which has been the case. So that was really exciting for us as well.
Vicki, that's amazing. You tell the story so seamlessly. There are several things I wanted to pull out, because a part of this, the reason why we wanted to do this series was not only to share this story, but also to encourage and empower other employers, other institutions to say that you can do this too. And so I want to go back just a little bit to the beginning of the story and just pull out some key things here. Number one, you mentioned that the need for this came during a conference you all were having for the women iron workers. So you all made space to have this, and then that the leader identified a person, put resources behind this effort. Talk to me a little bit about both what it meant to make space for this kind of conversation, because the kind of trust that it must have been there for someone to share their situation and the miscarriage, because, you know, she was afraid to share with her doctor how much, you know, the weight was. Like, the trust there to me speaks a lot about your organization. But talk to me a little bit about what you all had done previously to make the space and identify you as the leader for that space.
Well, I do have to say that the trust started with our president emeritus, Walt Wise, because he was the one that started going to the Tradeswomen Build Nations conference and having caucuses with us and listening and hearing what we had to say. And President Dean was adamant that he was going to continue that work that Walt had started. And I think that it helped that particular year, it was in Chicago. Mr. Dean is from Chicago. The women that were kind of started leading this conversation had known Mr. Dean throughout his career. So they felt safe with him, and they were the ones that kind of started the conversation. But then to have other women open up like that, not only was it surprising, but it was refreshing, because the only way to make change is for them to know about the issues and know about the problems. So I was really, in a sense, taken aback, but in another sense, so relieved that we're not sugarcoating our issues anymore. We're actually laying them out with real heart and real soul, and having the story to back it up.
Absolutely. I'm still processing that because that takes a lot of courage. I remember nowhere near in an environment like a iron worker. I worked in nonprofits when I was pregnant with my son, and I was afraid to tell my boss. I was like, I don't know what I would tell her. Like, I promise I'm coming back. So I am thinking about the vulnerability, the anxiety, and again, that trust that speaks volumes to your organization, that was able to come forward and that real change was able to happen. What has this meant for you, Vicki? I know you mentioned the mom of sons, like seeing this process grow, and you being able to champion it. What does that mean to you in this space?
Well, it was pretty awesome to be able to roll this out about 10 months later at our Impact conference. So we did this within 10 months and we rolled it out on this stage of a women's panel that I had put together. And I kind of stumbled on my words as I was trying to get it. I was so excited to be able to say this out loud because I had been holding it in so long. And I kind of stumbled my words and I just went, wait a minute, I gotta take a breath and then I'm gonna try this again. So then I told the group of about, I don't know, 1,200 business agents, business managers, contractors and whatnot. But the cool thing was the day before, they let me sit in on the meeting where the general executive board for Impact was going to vote on this. And it was unanimous. And I think that too was part of that. And I just remember trying not to choke up and cry because this was the first in the building trades to do it, but it was also such a big deal, not only for the construction trades, but I looked up Google, I looked up Microsoft, I looked up all these amazing companies, and our maternity policy and some points and some of those companies is better. Go figure. So it meant a lot for my career because people look at the ironworkers now in a different way, right? I'd be remiss. I got to tell you this. Lots of men called afterwards, wanted to know how, do we have paternity care and how can we, what do we do for the men? Mm-hmm. And here's what I have to tell them. This is a safety program. This came out of a woman having a miscarriage. Mm-hmm. This is a woman that goes to work that could be jeopardizing the life of her own life and the life of her unborn child. When you go to work, you're not jeopardizing your unborn child, but we could be. And this, and just making them realize that this is a safety program. And then if you get the guy that's just a real adamant about it, you can always say, well, which one do we pay for? Because I can only get pregnant about one time a year. How many children could you potentially have every year? How would we even monitor that? Right. So that's for the guys that are just, being badgers and,
Excellent point, Vicki. No, this is, as you mentioned, so She Built This City. We're a young organization that our local 848 union, Isael and Dan, they've been amazing and supporters of She Built This City. That's actually how we connected first, was our first little introduction to the ironworkers last summer. And I've always admired from the get, understanding the value that you place on your people and you put action behind it. And so from what I hear you saying, you took over this role within 6 months. This summit happened and you all learned about this policy or the need for this policy. You went to action in 10 months later. So in less than 18 months from you starting the program, you had a maternity leave plan that was voted on and approved. Yes. That's unnatural, Vicki. So
it's kind of crazy. Yeah. And I have to say that this really does come from having the leaders at the ironworkers at the very top on board and pushing down the things that they believe and really talking to the ones to push up. So it was just, this to me speaks volumes that we do want more women. We need more women. I mean, obviously we cannot man the work with the men we have. We're going to have to get women in. We need them. We need them to keep beefing up our pensions for the men that have gone on pension before us.
Right.
It's an important step. Now, is everybody still on board with women? No, no. But, you can only change one heart, one mind at a time. And I think that's why the pandemic was so difficult for me, is trying to change hearts and minds over a Zoom call is really hard. But if I can get you face to face,
Yes.
then I can convince you why and how, so thankfully we're coming out of this and I'm traveling again. And that is exciting for me, because I feel like we need that one-on-one time with contractors. We need that one-on-one time with our leadership. And then we need it with our members so that they know where we're coming from and why it came about.
Absolutely. Vicki, you mentioned the retention, 83%, the women who used the policy came back. That's astounding. And I also like the fact that you noted that come back doesn't mean necessarily immediately. Are they still paying their dues? Like, right. I'm making the choice to stay home for the first 2 years, but I'm still a part of the process. That gives the woman the latitude to make that decision, what's best for her and her family. I think that is awesome. I wanted to ask, have you seen any differences in women who are choosing to join the ironworkers based upon this policy, or how is the policy now used in the recruitment or other programs related to getting more women to the ironworkers?
Well, part of it, I think, we do have a pre-apprenticeship for all women that we do in Benicia, California. Our next one is in October, which is really exciting. And I'll be actually reporting on that tomorrow in front of 848 and all those other locals. But I like to go there and talk to them about it and explain how it works, so that becoming pregnant can either be the most joyful time of your life, or it can be the most terrifying time of your life.
Yeah.
And I remember when I got pregnant, even as a journeyman, I was scared, because I was like, oh my God, I got to tell my employer, how's this going to work? So I can relate to what you said earlier. And it's unfortunate that women in any capacity, in any job, have to be fearful about speaking their truth and worrying about growing their family. But I think it's a great organizing tool, especially for women that maybe are working non-union and they don't have this kind of policy or the benefits that we have with the union. I just think it puts us a step above in many ways. And I think it shows that we do care, and that we are trying to build equity within these jobs. And I think for sure this maternity policy gives the women iron workers equity.
Absolutely. I like the fact that you use that word of equity. And I think of the meme that shows, like, you're trying to look at a baseball game or something, and equality is everyone has the same size bucket.
That's right.
Equity is that my buckets may be a little bit higher because I started off lower. So I need additional supports there. And the fact that you all are creating a platform for women to have equity in the space, and they don't have to sacrifice the ability to grow within your organization and grow their family. And it addresses the humanity, it's life,
That's right.
Part of what it means to be a woman, and you're addressing that. It's beautiful.
And one of the things that I always use for equity, Latoya, I just started doing this because, we've all seen the buckets, and I just don't know sometimes if that's very effective. So tomorrow, what I'm going to be telling the men that are here is that let's take two young people that are going to start their apprenticeship on the same day. And you've got one that's a generational iron worker. So his dad's an iron worker, his grandpa's an iron worker. So you know that this guy is going to get all the tools he needs to start his first day on the job. But what if you got a kid that grew up very poor and doesn't even have the money to go get the tools that he needs to start that first day? What if the apprenticeship had tools they can borrow for like the first month until they get a few paychecks and they can go buy the tools they need? If we have those loaner tools to give to this guy, and the other guys already got tools because generational, they had all the tools, but they start the same day, they look the same. They both look equally prepared to do the job. And there's so many young guys and young women that are starting that don't have $500, $600, $700, $900 to go buy tools. But what if we gave them the equity to start with those tools that they need the same day. And in a month, you give them back to us and we'll give them to the next person to
Yes.
use for their, and to me, that's tangible. And they,
Yes.
and I don't know if that helps with giving an example for you to use later on,
Yeah.
but
yeah.
I really feel like the men get it when I start talking about giving them tools.
Got you.
Give them the tools. Give them for a month so they have enough time to make a few paychecks, and then they can go buy their tools. So that's
empowerment, empowering them to be able to achieve on their own.
Right. Giving them the tools that they need to at least be equal to start.
At least be equal. At least be equal. Yes.
That's right.
No, absolutely. Thank you for that. I'm noting that. And I'm also noting the all-woman cohort you have in California.
Yeah, keep in touch with me on that. Yeah. There should be a flyer coming out soon.
Okay.
And I'll make sure we get that to you, or call me and we'll make sure you get that.
Absolutely. Well, Vicki, as we close out, I want to ask what's next, because I know there's another policy that you all have about bullying and trying to welch. So I'm just.
I got you. It's called our Be That One Guy. We kind of rolled it out a couple of years ago. The timing was kind of bad with the pandemic, but I'm noticing now that contractors are calling me and saying, what do you have for sexual harassment or blah, blah, blah. Now, I do think it's important. There is a sexual harassment program through Impact, or a class that they can take, which is amazing. But I think that boots on the ground need something tangible, something easy, something that they can take away. So what we figured is 90 to 90, no scientific data here, but in my opinion of working in the trades for 36 years, 90 to 95% of the men are just really good people. 5 to 10% are horrible. They're just jerks. And we give that 5 to 10% too much power. And we allow them to take things too far. So what if we taught our good guys ways of deflecting a situation or distracting a situation, or just being straight up, knock it off? Yeah. Not everybody's a knock it off kind of person, and that's okay. But there are ways, if they see that I'm being verbally chastised for nothing about my work, but maybe my gender or my color or whatever, yes, you could say knock it off. Or what if you walked up and said, hey, Vic, the foreman wants you over there, and giving me an escape to get away from that situation, because then it can, kind of de-escalate. Or by walking up to him and saying, hey, did you see the Chicago Bears last night? What'd you think? And just start that conversation, allowing a person to get away. Most of the men that are bullying and harassing, they come in a couple of categories. One, they're just jerks. Or two, something's going on in their life. Whether it's their wife told them they want a divorce, or somebody's sick at home. And especially in those circumstances, we want to make sure that our brothers don't get into that illegal harassment. And by being able to have somebody go up to him and say, knock it off, or send the person away, and then be able to say, what's going on? Are you okay? Because right now in construction, the construction workers are the highest in suicide right now.
Yes.
And we're number one. This is not a place where iron workers want to be number one, but we're number one in suicide. So we're going to have to get into this culture of care that they have webinars on the Impact website on the culture of care, on suicide prevention and on opioid abuse. And so we need to really examine ourselves and our brothers. And if our brothers and our sisters are just unusually cranky, unhappy, sometimes just asking, are you okay? Yeah. Can keep them alive for another day. Absolutely. So there's a lot to that. There's a lot to unpack, but I'm happy that contractors are starting to take notice. They're starting to see that we are coming up with this culture of care. And quite frankly, we do care about our members. And absolutely. that 5 to 10%, we can hope that will retire out or leave or whatever, and we'll keep the good guys, or we'll change the bad guys.
Yeah,
But by not giving them the response that they're looking for with everybody laughing, or,
exactly.
if somebody tells them that's not funny, to stop it, the bully's usually going to stop, because if they're not getting that response that they're looking for, it's not going to continue.
Absolutely. That attention-seeking behavior.
Yes.
What I love about this, Vicki, the educator in me, is celebrating the fact that you're teaching them how to be an ally. I think it's very easy on the surface to say, be an ally, help, but like, give them something to say. Like, give them like, it's
Yes.
hard when you're in that moment and you don't know what to say and what to do, that you're giving them the language, you're giving them scenarios to say, this is what you can do to help. Because I've seen, been in a situation where you want to help, but you don't know what to do. You don't know how to stop it. And so I absolutely love that you all are making it extremely tangible. This is how you can become an ally. And this
That's
is how
right.
you can break that cycle. But you don't stop there. You then say, then check on your brother. Both, actually. Like,
right. Check on both.
Okay.
That's right. That's right.
Mhm.
And many times, and I know with many of the women that I talk to that get into these situations with somebody bullying them, if the person that bullied them later came up and apologized, that's all it would take for it to be done.
Yeah.
If they just said, hey, I was having a really crappy day, I took it out on you, I am so sorry.
Yes.
Cool, we're good, we're done, it's good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that we need to take ownership of our actions. And maybe not at that day, maybe the next day, maybe a couple of days, let everybody cool off. But I do think that acknowledging that your actions or your words were inappropriate,
right,
are the right thing to do.
Absolutely.
And this way it doesn't escalate on a contractor to where it gets into that illegal harassment.
Yes.
So
again, here I see the ironworkers doing the due diligence to address the humanity associated. Like, when you come to a site, I'm just not a worker here to do my job and go home. I like to tell myself, you bring your whole self to the job. Like, so whatever's
That's
going
right.
on at home, whatever's going on outside of the work environment, you bring that with you. And so what I hear you saying is you're teaching and you're advocating that culture of care is to care about the whole person, the whole being.
That's right.
And giving space to be human. Like, we all have bad days. And so
That's
it's
right.
one of those things to say, I can give you grace, let's figure this out, but we're going to move forward so that we have a safe space for everybody. I love that. The humanity.
Yeah, I think sometimes just tell them, go take a walk for 10 minutes, go cool down, or the person that's been harassed, maybe you need to go have some coffee or something. Just take a little bit. And, I just think
Yes.
de-escalating and giving them the space they need to go, okay,
Yeah,
okay, I'm good now,
absolutely.
And 9 times out of 10, it's not what's going on in that moment.
Yeah.
It's what's going on at home or going on in their personal lives.
Yes. What it seems like to me, Vicki, is that you all are doing a lot to address the stigmas associated with a male-dominated field, giving space to have that conversation and communication and to call out, culture that I think some could say is like boy locker room or men locker room kind of stuff.
Yes.
Like, you're making it the norm now to address those things, and what the boys will be boys mentality isn't necessarily what it's going to be, and what maybe the direct or indirect correlation, that suicide rate. Like, we're doing due diligence as an organization to look at what we can do to support that, but it seems like there's a correlation there of like the culture of lack of accountability, I'll just put it that way, and not having that culture of care may be going hand in hand with how we address issues. And so I think that this is just the beginning of something amazing, longevity, with the organization holistically. Thank you, Vicki.
You're welcome.
I'll say this again, going back to the point that we're doing this series educationally, but to learn, but also to empower others. And so if there is an organization thinking about, anti-bullying policy or how to empower women with a maternity leave policy, what would your advice to that DEI leader or, person in charge of culture of care at an organization, what would be your advice to that person?
Well, I first need to give a shout out to the Painters Union.
Yes.
They just came out with their own maternity policy. It's very much like the Iron Workers, pretty much mirrors it.
Yes.
And I have to tell you, I'm very proud of them. They reached out, they asked questions, we talked a lot, and I feel like, and you, as you see, ours is online, so everything's out in the open. So if anybody wants to mimic it as well, but big shout out to IUPAT for, they did it, and it was just within the last month. So that's that to me is so exciting to see this now taking flight with another international union. So that's very cool. And I think that flattery, that's the biggest form of flattery right there, is that they thought enough of ours to actually do it. And yeah, definitely. And I forgot what your question was, but I wanted to start with that. But,
any advice to someone who may be sitting in your seat at an organization? How do they champion? How do they move forward with programs like these?
Well, I have seen that a new in Seattle has something called Rise Up.
Yes.
Oregon, I believe, has the Green Dot. It's a Oregon Tradeswomen Inc. The sheet metal workers just came out with something similar to Be That One Guy, and I can't remember what it is. But again, following the iron workers, which is cool. I mean, there cannot be too many of these programs, quite frankly.
Right.
And I think that we do a really good job of speaking to anybody that wants to hear it, like yourself, as well as our tradeswomen committee through NAB2, through the tradeswomen committee, through the AFL-CIO. We share, and which is pretty cool in and of itself. So I'm very excited about that.
Absolutely. It takes that transparency if we're going to make waves of change, at the rate and speed that we need to. So thank you all for that transparency. Thank you for your willingness to share the story, the materials, the ways, the hows of making this a reality across the industry into other sectors as well. And so thank you, Vicki, for leading the way. Thank you to the Ironworkers International. This has been an amazing conversation. I'm excited that we'll be able to share this on our platform to get that story out there, so that we can highlight, the work that you all are doing to make equity possible in the space. This has been a great conversation. Again, this is She Built This City. We've had Vicki O'Leary, and we are just honored by the story, by the impact. And until the next time, we'll be talking about other ways to make space and equity in the trades. Thank you so much.